Right. I say we kick it off. The doors are open, so people can join us at any time. Welcome, Benoit, and welcome, Sabrina. Sabrina, give me a thumbs up if you're joining us from mobile. Hey, she is! Woohoo! Awesome. Let's see how that will work out.
I thought it
That's
was
great.
especially for mobile.
It is. You did well. You did great. It is especially for mobile. Hey,
Hey
Eric.
folks, how's it going? I've seen a lot of your faces before, and I've never actually met any. I've watched you on recordings, which is really weird. Nice to meet you.
Welcome,
That's stalking, I
Eric.
think. It's called stalking. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. He's carefully listening to every single word we're talking in sessions and transcribing them into very interesting blogs. That's what Eric does. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Jay, as well. I am very, very, very excited about today's AMA. It's going to be a short and sweet one. We've got about 25 minutes, so we're keeping this super short, and we're celebrating today our mobile app launch on Product Hunt. So if you haven't upvoted or liked or commented, you are kindly invited to do so. We're very happy for every single sign of support we're receiving. So super happy to have Jay with us here today. We've literally pulled this off over the weekend. So it's like, Jay, on Friday, Jay, what are you up to on Monday? Are you with us? And he said, yes. So I'm very grateful for that. And those of you who don't know who Jay is, which I think there's like not the case in this room, he's the founder of New Haircut and our guest in today's session. Jay, welcome, and I will pass the talking stick over to you. Tell us who you are, tell us a bit about yourself and your work, and then we'll kick off.
I know all these folks. I've been with Sabrina, right? Sabrina, we haven't been together though in a few years. I'm Jay Melone. I'm the founder of New Haircut, as Anna Maria said. I offer product strategy to digital product teams that are looking to bring new ideas to market. And I have lots of fun working in workshops and sprints, especially plug intended, working inside of Butter these days. It's been a nice, pleasant, breathable shift from our counterparts over at Zoom, who don't listen to anything that I offer in terms of new product suggestions. Love it.
Just leaving that reaction there. Awesome. Arshad, welcome as well. All right, so I have a couple of questions ready for you, Jay. I am also very curious on your take on some of the things that are on my mind lately. But obviously, everyone who is listening to us, this is your time, your AMA. We can literally ask Jay anything. That's what he said. So I don't know. He said no boundaries, right? Joking.
I gotta go.
Feel free to use the chat and drop your questions there. And Jay, first question from my side. Now, we know that in the past couple of years, accelerated by we know what, there has been a lot of change in the way we collaborate, the way we solve complex problems or challenges as teams. So the collaboration has changed over the past years, and went from almost 100% offline to 100% virtual, and now there's like talk of this hybrid model. Some people are adopting it, others are slower to adopt it. If you look back at all of these changes and transitions, was there anything that surprised you, something unexpected that you were like, oh, what is this? What's happening?
Yeah, of course. The virtual stuff started for me in 2017. So it was, I guess, what surprised me was just how well this stuff works. So I learned that in 2017. And then in 2020, when everything changed, I had forgotten the sort of the wall that people have to get over initially to learn that like the work that we do in person can work when we're not in person. I think what surprised me most is it seems like now we have people at two ends of the spectrum. One that are like, can't wait to get back in person, and the others that think everything needs to happen exactly as it's been happening for the last year or so, and forgetting, like, for example, every time I schedule a meeting, I ask people, do we need to meet over a video call or can we talk on the phone? And people are actually confused, almost to the point I'm like, well, we could talk on the phone, or we could actually, now we can go meet for a coffee if you're in the New York, New Jersey area. So it's surprising to me how quickly people forget the way things used to be, and that if we made such a big shift in the last couple of years, it's surprising that more people aren't sometimes more open-minded to what still might be and what still might come. But I guess I'm the same way. So when I say people, I'm including myself, because I was also one of the people that were like, there's no way you can do the stuff that we do in person over virtual. We have to be in the same room. I have to be able to like hold this Post-it in your face, and you have to be able to tell me that it's not right. But so I guess, you know, I'm surprised at how stubborn people are, but I guess I'm also not surprised.
Surprised and not surprised at the same time. Welcome, Jessica, and welcome, Joe. Feel free to use the chat to drop any questions you have for Jay. Also, feel free to use the queue, and we can pass the talking stick to you, of course. I see some nods, some smiles. People, they recognize each other. Like, hello. That's awesome. So Jay, I know that a lot of your work revolves around product design sprints. So you're running a lot of those, and I also know that everything has to do with product discovery or problem discovery, and the sprints and the solutions and the prototyping. I know that the sprint has a certain there's a fixed methodology to it. There are certain tools. There are certain time frames, time boxing. It's a pretty straightforward process to run. What is the role of facilitation in a sprint? So how does it add value? How can a good facilitator add value to what looks like a very set in stone, pretty straightforward framework? I'm curious to hear your take on that.
Well, if you had asked me that about 5 years ago, I would have said someone that's really structured and manages the clock really well. So my background in project management made for a good facilitator, because I thought it was it is a lot of structure, and it is a lot of making sure that you get from conversation to conversation, that you reach the conclusions that you're hoping to. So there's a lot of prep. There's a lot of moving people through the conversations and the activities and the decisions, and there's follow-up and retrospectives and all those things. So all those things are important. But as you're asking me the question, I immediately thought of a conversation I had with a friend of ours in the facilitation community, Allison Coward. I think I'm going to paraphrase because it's been a couple of years since she said it, but something like she believed that the best facilitation was when people forget that you're there. And I think that was probably the biggest leap for me as a facilitator of not showing up as the expert or the consultant or the person because you shape the conversation, needing to own every single piece, and just being comfortable with awkward silence, being comfortable with letting the conversation drift a little bit, making sure that people are still comfortable with the topic and the agenda, but not making it your conversation. And when I say that, I still struggle every time that I'm not in control, especially when I'm being paid to be the facilitator. But every time I do step back and let people just kind of go for it, it takes a lot of the pressure off me for sure. And I think people then start to engage a little bit more. So another friend of mine, Daniel Stillman, calls it lazy facilitation. So like, how can you give people the job of owning the conversation? Because the more you own it, the less they'll engage. So it's this nice, delicate balancing act there, but it takes a lot of practice.
I remember Daniel saying that I had the pleasure to be in one of his master classes here in Amsterdam. And I think he mentioned that right at the beginning of the master class, like, yeah, I'm going to do close to zero work today, because if I'm working more than you guys, then I'm doing something wrong as a facilitator. So that was a very precious lesson to learn straight from the get-go. And this leads me to, yeah, he's doing it really, really smooth. Yeah. This leads me to another question, and it's actually, I'm sure that this is not the first time that you're hearing this question, Jay. And I think there's a lot of, it comes a lot on, in general, facilitators' minds, consultants, in general, people that are working with their clients for a set period of time, and then they stop. So if you're lucky, or if the contract or the collaboration involves a follow-up or a retrospective, then you get to somehow take the pulse and see what change did actually happen as a result of the workshop, the sprint, whatever it is that you've supported them with. But I know that in a lot of facilitators' minds is this question, hey, how can I facilitate myself out of that process? And so to make sure that the goodness, the impact, the change that we're doing while we're working together is sustainable after I'm leaving. So have you thought about that? Do you have any kind of tips, methods, tricks, something that you're doing to just offer support while even long after you're gone?
Yeah, two things. One thing that I always tell people is that I don't know if there's another style, but I refer to my style of facilitation as teach to fish, because I don't feel, I have mixed feelings on this. On one hand, I feel that facilitation is not yet a full-time job. And it's also not something that necessarily happens day in and day out. At the same time, the thing that good facilitators do for the group is a muscle and sort of a mindset that needs to stick around. And I know that going to a one-day workshop or doing sort of like a training, a boot camp on your own, it's really hard to feel that shift that starts to happen. So this past year, I've been trying to get out of the one-off sprints. So I in New Haircut, we refer to sort of like the 1 week sprint, or sometimes in my case, the 4 week sprint, as a big bang sprint, because it's great for like that shot in the arm kind of thing. And sometimes the group really needs all of that energy all in one big dose, but I've learned that it fades really quickly. And I'll come back, or I'll check in on progress. So I'll do some coaching and some training, and the sprint never really moved anyway because the muscle wasn't there. So we've been kind of pulling the sprint apart and doing it what we're calling, instead of a big bang sprint, we're doing them as rolling sprints. So we come in for 3 months and 6 months. And what we do is we embed a lot of training and coaching in between, because it's those small practices. So we're in a sprint, it's very tense. There's a lot of pressure to get the right thing moving forward. And sometimes people are holding back a little bit. And so they have lots of questions. So they want to practice it in another thing that they're doing, or meeting with their boss. So we'll do a lot of embedding of that. All of the soft and the hard skills that they're seeing me do in the sprint, I'm doing with them in small batches. And it's those little tiny steps along the way that when I leave, along with all the other stuff I give them, like the Miro boards, the mural boards, the artifacts, the interviews, all of those things, plus all the coaching and teaching. Hopefully when I leave, they feel ready and poised to do it. And someone, like 1 or 2 people, will raise their hand to be the facilitator for the group going forward.
I think those are great tips, and this hearing you talk about that, and also how teams tend to kind of, or they have to also learn to take ownership and maybe use the same methods, frameworks, even sometimes have to change their mindset, right, to continue to work that way. After working with so many teams that probably you saw some of them being super successful, making a big change, a big transformation, and others probably less. I wonder if you were able to pinpoint some of the characteristics of the teams that are very creative, very innovative, very effective. Is there something that sets them aside from the rest?
Yeah, it's a great question. I always quote Brene Brown when people ask me about creativity. What's her quote? Vulnerability is the birthplace of, in some, creativity, innovation, and change. And so I learned this lesson years ago when I was running a sprint, and I've told this story a few times, where the person who hired me mentioned how she really enjoyed the sprint, and she also felt like it was only her idea and her counterpart's idea, and they were both very senior people in the organization, and it was only their ideas that we took forward, and everybody else's were sort of like the same ideas that had been going through the mill for the past few years. And she asked, if we do this again, how can we get them to really kind of bring new ideas and new thinking? And I had no idea how to help her think through that. And that's going back to your question a couple of questions ago. That's when I was showing up and like very structured, and this is how we're going to do this step, and this is where we're going next, and we have 20 minutes to get through it. And they felt very efficient, but I never really checked in with them as people. It was a new team. There were actually two sister companies. This was Rosetta Stone and their sister company, Lexia Learning. And so it was like people from both organizations coming together. I didn't even ask them how they felt about that, what was going on. After I left, within months, there was an acquisition. So I didn't know any of this was happening. And so no wonder these people they enjoyed it. At the same time, I'm sure that they were like, oh, I wish I had put this idea out there, because I've been sitting on it for a few months or a few years, and this was the opportunity. But maybe they thought Jay didn't really give me the invitation to bring that idea. So spending a lot of time, I think the most successful teams, I think they're willing. I don't really ask for permission anymore. I make sure that at the start of my sprints and workshops that I spend a whole bunch of time getting to know who's going to be in the room, bringing those people together, really kind of like inviting them into the process, the way that we're going to share ideas together. So really like teaching them the tools and the language. And those teams tend to have a lot more success. They also have a lot more fun in the process, because now they trust one another, feel a little bit better. And it's not just doing a silly icebreaker, although icebreakers are great. It's really like being intentional and spending some time together.
Yes, look at this big agree. Look at look at all the reactions. Yes, so this resonates a lot. We have a question from Joe in the chat. So, can you share how you've handled conversation when the sponsor of the workshop or the larger initiative wants you to play more than the role of a neutral third party? Politics, politics, politics. Did this happen to you?
Yeah, of course. Especially. I think I always share the story. So like when I'm meeting new groups, I tell them my journey to coming into design thinking and design sprints and all that stuff. And a part of that story is me being a software engineer for a number of years and then a product manager. So I know, I've been in their shoes. I know who's going to be in the room. I'm very comfortable with that. And because of that, they'll say, well, at some point in the sprint, they're like, well, you were a product manager. What do you think of this conversation or these ideas, or should we go in this direction or that direction? So, I try to duck out as best I can, because I tell them, well, I'm not your customer, number one. Number two, as soon as I say this thing or that thing, probably you're going to go in that direction. And I have no research to back it up. And it sort of breaks the mold of everything that we've been doing here. So instead, I'll ask them a number of questions to help them get back in talking about going back to lazy facilitation. So I'll step back and ask them, what's going on that they think they need an additional opinion here. Reminding them again that my role is not to consult, it's to facilitate. By Sabrina. And I also, so to that point, I've also learned to say that way up front, because some people get disappointed. They're like, well, we thought you were going to come back with all of the answers. So I remind them that that's consulting. And to do that, I would have had to do a lot of research up front, and I would have had to come into your business. I would have had to do much more interviewing. I would have had to spend time with your customers. I do enough of that to guide the conversation, but I don't do enough to be an expert in their business. And so I try to remind them of that. Not that it's a cop out, but that they should listen to their customers, not me.
Joe, give us a thumbs up. Is this satisfying? Yes. Awesome. All right. We've got a couple of minutes to go. So if you have questions, please do share them in the chat. I'm also probably going to take 1 second to see if anyone is Queuing. There we go, Benoit.
Yeah, you prompted. You just kind of push
Hey,
it,
there we
and
go.
then
There
I
we go.
reacted. So you're doing a good
There
job.
we go.
Great job.
Thank you.
So I was wondering, there's a lot of teams that started, and I think we mentioned that earlier today in another conversation. Some teams are started from remote from the start, so they never actually meet and everything. And that connection that you get in a room that you can feel if you're physically with them, you don't get that. You have to. Sometimes it's created, sometimes it's not created. Do you have example of how to work with teams that do not know each other that well, but you still have to do your job? I don't know if it makes sense.
So in other words, for the teams that have been working remote from the start, how
Yep.
do I bring them together physically?
Well, mentally, or so that they can work together. Yes.
Yeah.
If you can do that.
Yeah. Well, it's a good timing that you're asking this. I think my hope, I don't know if I share this hope with everyone in the world, but my hope is that in 22 we can come together in person. I, as introverted as I am, and as much as I do enjoy the working like this, I'm really hopeful to spend more time in person. So I think that there are plenty of opportunities to do the work that we're doing, especially if we take advantage of all the sort of asynchronous time we have. I think this world has shined a light on just how much can get done asynchronously if we structure it and we give people, specific assignments and what we expect them and when we should meet and when we should make the next decisions. But I also think we should start to structure in some moments to come together. So a colleague of mine at New Haircut and I have been talking about in-person gatherings and bringing people together. What's it going to look like when we start doing sprints? Should we meet at the beginning? This is a question. Benoit, I guess my answer is probably going to be, I don't know. One thing that we're thinking about when we do these like 4-week-long sprints, should we get together in the beginning because everyone will meet and will feel safe, but then will it feel like a drop-off when we're meeting virtually? So should we save it for the end? When Daniel and I, Stillman and I ran a program a couple of years ago, right before COVID, and we had 2 in-person sessions, one at the beginning and one at the end. And it was like an opening. It was a really great opening that allowed all of the asynchronous and remote work and coaching to happen really, really well. And then we met at the end, which became almost like a celebration. So maybe it's something like that, like anchoring places that the group knows that they're going to get together. I'm not sure. And I also don't know. I also don't know what it's going to look like to do truly hybrid facilitation when you have pockets of people and individuals and people in an office. I've only just had like little bits of experiments there, and it was messy. So
yeah,
good luck to all of us figuring that out.
We're going to figure out at the same time all together. Thank you.
Yeah. That's cool, Joe.
Arshad, it's over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jay, for sharing your interesting insights and your wisdom. I would like to use this opportunity to ask you a slightly more personal question as someone who is quite new in the facilitation space. And I see you are quite the expert. So if you don't mind me asking, I'd like to find out, what are some of the things you do to get in the right mindset before you enter your design sprints?
Well, regardless, I'm always really nervous going into every sprint I ever do. So if you're feeling any sort of anxiety, I mean, groups are hiring you to figure out some important ideas. So if you feel anxious, it's probably a good thing. 2, I always make sure that I spend time with people individually beforehand, because just showing up in the big room as a new face, on top of it, like work stress that they have, there's their bosses in the room, their bosses in the room, somebody that they don't like is in the room. So me spending time with each person individually not only creates a relationship between me and everyone that's going to be there, but I also ask them some specific questions about things that they're excited about, things that they're not so excited about, and that helps me feel a lot more prepared. Now, I have some friendly faces. It's like the classic trick of, if you're going to do a big, like a big talk with 1,000 people or so, they always tell you like walk around the room and introduce yourself. And my default would be to be in the lobby, hiding somewhere. But if I push myself to just walk around and introduce myself, have a drink, have a glass of water, I feel much more comfortable. And now I see some friendly faces. It's the same thing. Even if you have a room of 10, a bit more friendly face, it's amazing what it does to bring down your anxiety. And if you're feeling more at ease, you're probably going to help the group feel a bit more at ease. That's kind of like my de facto for what I do.
Cool. Thank you. No, I usually have high energy, but some people are not really prepared for that. So for me, it's like, just take a step back. And if I may ask you just one more question, I have a challenge coming up like super soon, which is why I kind of jumped on this call in the middle of the night. One of one of our past students is trying to help people see their organization with more empathy. And she's having a hard time because there's a lot of cultural resistance. She's up in Kenya. Do you have any tips that I could maybe share with her and what she could do to maybe drive empathy? She is a facilitator right now for her company.
Is the problem empathy with one another, with the customer, all of the above?
They kind of so stuck in processes that they can't jump out of that transactional mindset to look at their customers.
Yeah, I know we don't have a ton of time to talk about it. I would consider asking her to play some games. If they're so stuck on process and they're very rigid in terms of like business metrics and sort of like business outcomes, sometimes getting them to just spend a little bit of time as human beings, maybe co-creating the agenda that they're like, probably it's a repeat of what I just said for your last question. Her spending time individually, because as soon as you bring a group of people together, ego and a little bit of ego and group dynamics starts to come at you. So her having a bit of one-on-one with each person is probably they're gonna trust her a little bit more, so that if she does do things that feel a little off to the side or strange, maybe they'll start to trust her a bit more. But also, like whenever I do workshops or sprints, if I know that the group is really stiff, getting them to do a small experiment where we play a game together of the sorts, and then I connect that game to what we're going to actually be doing together. Not just playing a game for the sake of playing a game, because that feels like you're wasting people's time, but playing a game so that people will lean into the actual activity. You'll probably get more engagement, a little bit more trust to take a swing at doing the hard work. Empathy, though, like remind her that empathy is definitely a muscle, and so she shouldn't feel like she's got to go from 0 to 100 overnight, just little by little. Also, last thing, practicing empathy with customer also takes the pressure off of practicing it amongst yourselves at first. I would say like start by doing customer interviews, having them hear the pains and challenges of the customers. And then you can back them up and say, how can we apply this to the work that we're to our own collaboration together? That's
cool.
When it
Thank you. Really helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
You get to sleep tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a co-facilitation, so they're going to be in person and we tuning in.
Okay.
Live. So I need to figure that out. But yeah, thank you.
All right, we're at time. Thank you so much for the awesome questions, everyone. Jay, I can't let you go until I ask you one last rapid fire question. And that's my absolute favorite question to ask. What is one piece of practical advice you would give to someone that is just looking to improve their facilitation skills?
Arshad, do what Arshad is doing.
Yeah.
Go co-facilitate with somebody. Well, especially if that person has some experience, for sure. Get in the room with somebody else who is more than just a project manager and good at keeping time. Get in the room, especially if that person has a different personality from yourself. Again, I keep using Daniel as my reference point, but he is a very different personality than I am. So watching him do those things and incorporating pieces that feel good for me, but then making it my own style, super. Training is cool, but if you can get yourself in the room, I'm always kind of like feet to the fire kind of person. So get in the room and do the work and just be honest with people. This is my first workshop. I'm looking for feedback, things I did well, things I didn't do so well. You can also host a little bit of retrospective at the end just to ask for feedback. What are some things that we should keep doing? What are some things that were not helpful or that you'd like to have gone differently?
Thank you so much. Love this. Thank you so much, Jay. A round of applause for you. And thank you everyone for joining us in the late evening or in the morning or middle of your day. This was awesome. And I am sure I will see you guys around. Take care and see you soon. Thanks, everyone.